So we've just had the announcement of the Mecha BREAK release date, which is awesome. I am so happy because I have been pining for this game, and I wanted to take a moment to basically have a bit of a retrospective because I was lucky enough to be in one of the closed betas, then I was lucky enough to get into the open beta, the mashmac one, and now we have obviously the full game launching in less than a month, which is wonderful. So I wanted to basically take this opportunity to look back at some of the feedback that both myself and some of my community members had regarding the open beta specifically, and talk about what the developers, Seasun Games, have actually done in the time between the open beta's end and now with the announcement of the release date. So I'm going to go through my thoughts first. Specifically, I'm going to start with just kind of bullet pointing out the ideas. So regarding the story elements, it was interesting that we got a kind of actual engaging opening storyline that teaches you about the world, but then because I guess it was a open beta and obviously still in beta and development, we suddenly got it. The story suddenly just got left. It got dropped, and the focus of the beta was mashmac. So it kind of made sense. But I'm looking forward to seeing, especially with the new trailer, where that's actually going to go, because it seems like we're getting more story based on what was in the trailer anyway. The guy that you see kind of bending down at one point in the trailer and then standing up after talking to one of the other characters, he is effectively your commander in the little bit of story that we got in the open beta. So it definitely seems like we're getting more world building and potentially more storyline, which I'm really excited for. I do wonder, because there was kind of some single player missions right at the very beginning of the open beta, whether or not they're going to be in the full version, or rather whether they're going to continue in the full version and we have more single player kind of PvE content as well as the PvP and then the mashmac PvPvE content. So that will be interesting to see, because it looks like the trailer is showing more, again, storyline, more potentially PvE content. So I guess we will watch this space. Then we have Operation Verge, which was my personal favorite kind of content in the game. That was just your standard PvP. It felt like the matchmaking was pretty decent for the most part. I know there were a lot of bots in the open beta, but I think that was mostly because they wanted to make sure that there was always going to be enough people for the matchmaking to happen and take place so that people could actually try the game out. I don't suspect that will continue in the full game. At least I hope not, but at the very least it does mean that you get some gameplay out of it. The balancing within Operation Verge was actually really good as well. Everything kind of seemed to fit well into specific roles and have almost like a rock, paper, scissors or like elemental wheel kind of balancing between them. So like some mechs were good against others, but then other ones were best against them. And it made this nice little team balancing act that you had to kind of work out. Almost like a rock, paper, scissors is probably the best way for me to describe it. And then the achievements that they gave you weren't actually too difficult to get either, which gives you a nice kind of sense of satisfaction and kind of makes the game feel more accessible, I think. Because one of the big issues that I see for a lot of people when it comes to PvP games is they feel like it's not going to be accessible, they're not going to be able to progress in it properly. Whereas, at least from the open beta, I think Mecha BREAK does it differently. It feels like you can actually get somewhere. I mean, this was the first PvP thing that I've ever done where I got to a relatively high rank in ranked, despite not playing very much, because I obviously have a full-time job and everything, so I couldn't no-life it as much as I wanted to. So it definitely feels like specifically Operation Verge was very much an accessible PvP game, which was really cool. mashmac had some issues in the open beta. The PvP or PvPvE element was quite fun. Going up against the really like cool boss fights and the Colossi, whatever the plural of that is. That was really exciting, and I had a lot of fun doing it. But as the open beta progressed, things like the mods that you can get, like weapon mods, not actual game mods, but weapon mods for clarity, the mods that you can get, people found builds that effectively became meta very, very quickly. And if you didn't have that one specific build, you were basically just going to die. And so the balancing of the weapons became quite a big issue in mashmac. But also, that was the first time they'd actually ever done any kind of test, as far as or like open test regarding mashmac. So it's kind of to be expected. The customization, though, it's still to this day, I think, character customization, especially considering overall how little you actually see of your character, at least how much we saw in the open beta, outside of running around the hangar, it was basically just going into your mech. That was it. And then if you died, that was basically all you would really ever see. The sheer amount of character customization that you can do in that game is insane. I've likened it before to The Sims, but potentially more sliders. Myself and other people in the Mecha BREAK content creators Discord, we came up with a meme, a Final Fantasy XIV Mecha BREAK variant meme. So basically took the FF14 free trial meme and modified it to Mecha BREAK. And one of the lines is that the game has sliders for sliders, because it basically does. On top of that, the outfits that are in the game, you can get 8 die channels per outfit, and there's multiple different outfits that you can get. Then you have the similar level of character or color customization for the mechs themselves, the strikers. And you can even go and modify things like the drop pods for mashmac. You can customize them. You can customize the towers that you can spawn, and it's insane just how detailed the customization is. And then you also the last thing that I wanted to touch on before going through some feedback from community members was the hangar. The hangar itself felt like a fun little gimmick in the beta, but there wasn't really anything substantial. But it seems like they're going to add more kind of gameplay to it, and hopefully that'll be there at launch. For example, there was a gun range that you could unlock at level 50, but it specifically said it's not currently available in the beta. But it's a gun range that is human size, not mech size, which means that it seems like there's going to be more stuff you can do with your character itself as well. So there's also a pilot's lounge, so maybe there's going to be guilds or something, or multiplayer experiences within the actual hangar. So I guess we'll find out, but that's kind of my retrospective there. I'm going to go through some community member feedback, and then I'm going to talk about what the devs have done so far. So I'm kind of going to summarize, because there's quite a bit of feedback, but I've covered quite a lot of it already. So one part was that the onboarding takes too long. For example, if you want to just get started and start playing with your friends, there's quite a bit of story to get through, and for some people that's not really what they want to see. And also there's a lot of menus. I don't think the menus are going to change, but we have seen them actually take some of this feedback on board, which I will touch on shortly. And then in regards to the story and the pilot mechanics, there was generally positive feedback regarding the actual story, and a desire for more involvement of the pilot in gameplay. But as I kind of said, we have seen already glimpses of that in the open beta, that's actually going to happen. And from the trailer, it looks like that's going to happen more as well. We at least seem like we're going to be getting some kind of story mode, potentially. Things like emotes and dances would have been nice, especially if you end up having kind of out of mech experiences, for lack of a better term. And then, being able to see a party's mechs in full size in a shared hangar. So having a shared hangar as like a lobby for people who are in your squad, and then being able to see the mechs would be really cool. In regards to balancing, the general feedback that we got from the community was that it's really, really good balance so far, and that the accessibility it's there, and it doesn't take too much effort for you to kind of get into the game. Even if you're new to PvP games, you can just get started, and the matchmaking tends to do a relatively good job at that. But then there's also a decent kind of skill ceiling for you to work towards as well. But there was a bit of a desire to kind of have almost like squad brawls, which effectively would the best you could do would at the moment, at least in the beta, were effectively custom matches, but kind of a way of doing sparring matches and training matches in multiplayer. Because while there are training missions, going against obviously pre-programmed bots is a bit different to going against an actual person. So being able to do sparring matches with your friends or your squad mates would be quite fun. And finally, the round off with just a nice co-op PvE mode would be fun for more casual and relaxed play. That was largely the feedback that we had. So then, in terms of what the devs at Seasun have actually been doing, general feedback, not from my community or myself, but general feedback from people at large was that there was a dislike that you had to get some of the strikers through either what was effectively the battle pass or by just grinding like mad. But they've announced that all of them, all 12, will be available unlocked at launch. So that feedback was already taken, put into place. Everything's available. In regards to, like, for example, the community feedback that I got with the kind of intro bit and getting into the game taking too long, the tutorial being a bit too long-winded, there is now actually just a button at the start of the game that you can press to completely skip all of that. So they know that that was an issue, and they put in a skip button, so you can just skip and get straight to the content, which is brilliant news. Again, they've listened and they've implemented. They've added new things to the kind of beginning of what's actually unlocked. So Ace Arena is unlocked from the start. Ace Arena, I didn't actually get to try out because it was quite a long bit of a grind to unlock it in the open beta, but it's another mode of PvP. I think it's 3v3 if I remember correctly, but again, I didn't get to try it, but it's now just open from the start. Character customization outside of your initial character creator is now open from the start. You can freely modify your pilot whenever you want after that initial creation. Mashmax is open from the get-go. The custom rooms for the 6v6 and 3v3, the custom matches, are all open. Everything is open from the get-go, which was another big kind of bit of feedback that they got from the wider player base, the wider community. And then they've modified the way the gliders and the modular weapons work in Mashmax to make it kind of a better feel and a better play style, and hopefully that's going to remove some of the rather annoying meta builds that people put together in the open beta. But it seems again like they listened and that they've modified and implemented the changes that people asked for. The mods themselves, you can only have them in Mashmax. The mods worked effectively in everything in the open beta. Once you put the mods on for your mech, they were just on. So it could get to the point where you could put the best mods in the game, not the modular weapons, but the actual mods of the like the stat mods effectively into your mechs, your strikers, and then go into Operation Verge, and you're actually stronger than you normally would be, for example. That's now been modified or kind of changed within the game so that the mods only work in Mashmax to make Operation Verge a completely flat, stable, skill-based type of content, which I like. It makes it a lot more fairer. And yeah, I guess what I kind of wanted to highlight here was the fact that the open beta was already a lot of fun. And it was a really great game. I mean, I quite obviously love it, but there were some issues that people brought to light. And that led to the devs pushing the game's launch back, because it would have been out by now originally. They pushed it back so that they could actually work on the things that people fed back, which in this day and age, honestly, is quite a rarity. And for them to not just kind of roll their sleeves up and say, well, actually, I think it's fine. We're going to do what we want. They went and they took the feedback, the exact feedback that the community had, and they fixed it. And the only other company that really does that and really kind of is known for that is, well, it's part of Square Enix, and that is the Final Fantasy XIV developers. And they get lauded and praised for doing it because they quite rightly should be. And I wanted to kind of give the same praise and admiration to Seasun Games, because they're clearly doing the same kind of mentality of, we want to make sure that our players are enjoying the game. We need to listen to our players. And that, I think, needs to be celebrated. So that's kind of what that's the biggest takeaway, I think, that I want for people from this video more than anything, is that the devs are actively listening. And that's brilliant. And it makes me even more excited for when Mecha BREAK drops at the start of July. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you on the battlefield. Bye.